Login accepted.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the tech capital of the world, or should I say duck capital of the world, Kernersville, North Carolina, Kevin. We have geese invading our building.
Yeah, I don't have them where I am, thankfully. I'm thankful
Leaving
for that.
little presents
You
on the sidewalk.
Yeah, that's not very
If you know what I mean. So
Yeah, that's not very good.
So it's me versus the duck. I feel like I could film a documentary or something. It feels like it's for Netflix or something, you know.
Nice.
I have a new nemesis.
I just have allergies through the roof today. I don't know why.
Yeah.
If I sneeze on here, I apologize.
Yeah, it's beautiful outside today, so you can get outside and fight the pollen. But you know, I was riding my bike the other day, and I was thinking about allergies because when I got my bike back to home, it was covered in green pollen. Like it was just like completely covered.
Yeah, I washed the car the other day. And and like literally the same day, the end of the day, I was like, oh, it's yellow again. Like
it's yellow again. So, exactly.
I have a black car. I was like, it's yellow.
Yeah.
They call it. I mean, if you're from North Carolina, you understand this. If you're not, certain parts of the world don't have this, but it's like the pollinating happens here every year, and it's like these tree pollens are nuts. Allergies and pollen are crazy. So there you go.
Me and you were on this.
By the way,
yeah,
allergies are brutal. They are. I don't know why. It's just the worst here that it's ever been. And there's
pine cones, man.
It is the pine cones. So the trees, literally behind my house, is a row of these trees, and they're just like you see these little yellow bits on. You're like, you're breathing that, and it's gonna make me feel horrible for like a month at least.
Right. Yeah.
But here we are. All right.
So me and you were on the same page. We talk about this, you know, what are we going to talk about and stuff like that. We were on the same page this morning, which is oddly enough. And we came to it from different ways. Yours came inspiration, brushing your teeth.
Right.
mine came from watching a really bad romantic comedy, which was called You, Me, and Dupree, which is like this dumb movie that I didn't even finish. But there's this one scene in the movie where he's trying to interview for a job, and he self-sabotages himself by doing this, by just some weird things. You have to go watch it, but like, you know, his rant on Columbus Day during the interview, it's very funny. But I walked away from that realizing that some of our students that we talk to them and debrief them do the same types of things, not to that degree, but like
it's close sometimes.
Yeah,
sometimes it's close. I mean, we talked about this, but let's talk about it like a little bit more detail, because it was like, because you mentioned this, you're like, oh, I watched this movie and this thing inspired me, and I was like, well, I was like brushing my teeth this morning, I had this idea, and then we like had the same kind of idea. We'll come up with these tips, and we'll say like some tips for people, like things to do, not to do. Generally, what not to do. Right. Well, that's about 50-50, right? But it was kind of funny that we came to that, and it's funny because I was like, we've had students do exactly that. Or it's not quite as obvious as that. It's not as obvious as being in the movie description that you gave me, where he's like, he asked about Columbus Day and then self-assessed and walked out of the interview. It's not quite that bad. It's not quite that bad, but it's close sometimes. You have to ask yourself, when you're in an interview situation, the question that you're going to ask, what kind of like light does it paint you in? That question about, do we get Columbus Day off, just screams, I don't want to work. If you're asking about vacation days, holidays, anything like benefit-wise, it screams, I'm just here for the cash. I don't care.
Right. I don't care about you or whatever you're doing.
Exactly. You know, your question that you recommend people ask is like, ask them about what they're working on. And I was like, yes, that's the ultimate version of this, because it says, I'm not here for the paycheck. I'm here because I'm interested in doing some work and working with you and doing something interesting. I'm interested in this.
And there's this overwhelming thing on tech Twitter, probably in the other social medias too, where you go into this interview and they try to paint it as an adversarial relationship that you need to have in the interview. You need to like really dial in on these guys. You need to own them and tell them how bad they are, you know, and that kind of stuff. And so, and that leads to this self-sabotage stuff too, you know, like, so, and then it's just funny if you watch You, Me, and Dupree, and you watch this interview, and then you come away and you say, "Do I do something like that? Do I really do that?" So here's the number one goal, and we'll get into our tips here in a second. The number one goal for an interview is to get an offer.
Right. Anything you do that negatively impacts that, you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. Even if you have like all kinds of options, like you're the best programmer in the history of mankind, and Microsoft would be lucky that you would even consider working there because you invented 10 things or whatever it is, Yeah. You still shouldn't have an adversarial take in the interview. Your job is to get an offer. Then you decide. Even if you think they're the worst company since sliced bread after the interview, you just quietly turn it down, and it doesn't reflect negatively on you. You should never walk out of an interview by giving the interviewer the business. That's not
right.
I've seen people that I told him he was an idiot. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I'd never work on Fridays.
Not a good look. Right. Yeah. See, we've had people ask those kind of questions. Like, do we get Friday afternoons off? Like, no, that says you're screaming, I don't want to work here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just here for the paycheck. You have to, every question you ask, frame it, kind of like think about it before you ask it in those interview situations. Like, does this reflect like that I'm interested in what's happening here? Or is this a question that's personal to me? If it's something that's personal to you, that says maybe I don't want to work here or I'm asking something else, I'm just here for the paycheck, save it for, you can ask those questions, but save it for HR.
Right.
You'll speak to the HR person.
Here's what I also say is you should be, in a lot of ways, this is why you work with a recruiter too, because you can ask those questions to the recruiter ahead of time. You can have a super blunt conversation, what's this place like? Are they evil? Are they going to put me in handcuffs and make me type with one hand? I mean, you can ask all of those questions ahead of time. But in the interview, your job is to get an offer. And that's all you got to do. You can't do anything until you have an offer anyway. And then you can decide whether you want to take it or not. Or you can ask some detailed questions, So like if you need to know if Columbus Day is a holiday at the company because you're really into Christopher Columbus, you ask that behind the scenes through a third party, and they can ask it in a certain way. So it doesn't reflect on you as the candidate.
Yeah, it reflects on the recruiter, doesn't it? The recruiter can ask that question like it's coming from them, like they're just trying to do their due diligence on the company. Yeah.
What is the holiday policy? What do you normally do? Do you have like 7? You have 8? What are those holidays?
And they'll just say, it's just so I can let my client know. They don't know the questions can't come from you. The recruiter will do a much better job of finding out that information than you ever will.
And then when you ask the recruiter says, I really like Columbus Day, the recruiter's going to go, they don't give that off. So you can take that as a personal day. You can do that, whatever, but
that brings up a great point too, though. Like, just asking that question or asking a question like that, right? Let's say, do we get Friday afternoons off? Like, is that going to affect whether you take the job or not? Because if it's not, definitely don't ask it.
Don't ask it. It doesn't
100%
matter.
Don't ask it. It doesn't even matter. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
I need a paycheck.
Right. Right. If it really, really matters, go through the recruiter, or at workplace, if you're not working with a recruiter, wait till you get a job offer, speak to HR. Start up day one and maybe ask it during your first week or something, or just try and figure it out when you get there.
Yeah.
You can ultimately figure it out.
Yeah. You ask the other guy on the cube that's been there for 20 years, the guy that's already jaded, at every job. So
exactly.
Hey, man, what's up?
It's going to be like, we don't get Columbus Day off, right?
We don't get Columbus Day. I really like it, So, he discovered America. So I don't understand. So, but I think watch it and then ask yourself the question: do I behave this way? But then there's 5 things that we think people outside of Code Foundry, sometimes in Code Foundry, the mistakes they're making. So here's what I'll caution you. Every time we have one of these, I get messages from students and say, are you talking about me? It's like, well, if you think I am, maybe you should listen. More than likely it's no. I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about in generally. I take a lot of interviews for students, and then I take that out, and it forms my worldview on how people are behaving in interviews. And so if you've made this specific, I'm not calling you out by name, but just say, hey, if you think you did that, think
I'll
about
also say
it.
You're not the only one. If
you're not the only one. Yeah,
it's not this isn't based on a single. None of these are based on a single case of anybody doing anything. They are based on multiple cases of people doing this multiple times. We see it. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of students. You can put them into kind of groups of people that have made these mistakes. No question, for sure you can.
And some of this advice comes from students that never went to Coder Foundry, never took our courses, and I see them on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever complaining about the job hiring process. And then we go look at them, we're like, yeah. And number one, that we're going to start with number one, like the number one. Like you could stop the video after this. We don't want you to, please like, subscribe, hit the set, hit all that stuff. But like, this is the reason why, if you're a junior trying to break in, more than likely why you're not landing. That's because you do not have a specialization in a stack. In general, right now in 2025, going forward, web development has the most opportunities. You could talk about all kinds of other jobs out there, but if you look at how many jobs are out there in each specification inside of web development or inside of development in general, software, desktop, mobile, AI, machine learning, whatever, web development is going to trounce all of those in the sheer number of jobs. However, what people do is they don't know what a stack is when you're starting out, or they don't specialize in a stack. I've also seen seniors and mids do this where their resume is littered with logos.
Yeah.
And I've asked them all the time, which one of these would you consider an offer for? Do you really want to work in COBOL? Well, I know COBOL. Would you take a job? No. Take it off your resume. Like, unless they're transitioning from COBOL to something else, then it makes sense. Then you can add it back in.
Yeah.
But if they're a React company, and that's what they are, they don't care if you know COBOL or not. They don't. It doesn't matter. So, like, you put in there what you want them to do, because when you hand them the resume or your portfolio or whatever, it's got to scream, my skills match your skills. And like, we are a match made in heaven. Talk to me. And that's the purpose of doing it. And so what a lot of students try to do is they try to learn every single stack they can. And especially juniors, they don't understand that there's Blazor, there's React, there's Angular. And those, you just need to learn one of those and then apply for jobs where companies are using that. And you'll have a lot better luck. If you don't know enough in any of these stacks to do anything and you just have logos on your resume, you're probably not going to pass a tech interview. And they're going to go, you haven't had a dev job yet and you know 3 web frameworks? Come on, man. Like, that's not true. And you just
you become untrustworthy. Yeah.
That's like, really? Come on, man. Like, you don't know all those. Like, so I think that's what it is. So you need to specialize in a stack. If you don't know what a stack is, then you've got a lot of work to do. This is why you're probably not landing a job anyway, if you don't know what we're talking about. But in general, here at Coder Foundry, we pick a stack to learn. Ours is Blazor on the front end and C# on the back end. Yours could be React or Angular, okay? But I would caution you, and we're going to do this from experiences, C# on the back end is probably where you want to be. So if you don't know what a back end is, an API, build an API back end is probably going to be built in 1 or 2 languages, C# or Java. I think C# is the best choice right now. If you're taking advice, listen to me. And then the front end, we like Blazor, which is ASP.NET. And people say, I don't see Blazor jobs. So you have to type in ASP.NET jobs or C# web developer jobs. And so it's a little more nuanced in how you search for it, but we see plenty of Blazor jobs out there. And then we have .NET backends for sure. But if you don't believe me on Blazor, learn React and C# on the back end. And that is your kind of your 2 stacks you want to do. And just focus on that stack, look for jobs in that, and you're going to have a lot better success. Are you going to reduce the number of opportunities for you? Technically, yes. Like, you're going to filter it out, but it narrows your search down so that you can find exact matches for what you're doing, and you're more than likely to be able to win a job. So this is the problem we see from students. Like, I applied to 600 jobs and got no feedback. Yeah, because you're not specializing in a stack. I mean, you're applying to any job whatsoever, and your stack doesn't even on the paper. And so you have to know what you're skilled in and match those jobs. It also shows credibility when you're like, I'm applying to this role and I have this on my portfolio and in my stack is on my resume and everything kind of matches. But if I'm applying to any role, and I have no experience in that whatsoever, it makes you look like you're not even educated about the marketplace. And so you need to know where you fit inside the marketplace. And I think that's why you get a lot of no's. It also is discouraging, right?
Here's a comment look from Lord of Sin says, I've done the typical junior bounce from stack to stack, can't focus it, always second guess what I'm learning. This is not untypical. This is why this is on the list.
Everyone does this.
Yeah. You know? And the industry doesn't make it easy, does it? Because there's everybody has an opinion on something, and there's all like, this is the way to go, this is the way to go, this is the way to go, this is the way to go. And that makes it confusing as a junior to pick something to learn. So you do end up trying to chase them all, and it's tough. I get it.
Yeah, I'm going to help you guys out right now. There are 3 front-end stacks that if you're starting out today, there's 3 of them. There's some other ones out there, I know, but if you're saying full stack web development, there's 3 that you should consider. Blazor, which is what we teach, React, number 2, Angular, number 3, in that order. Is there Vue? Yes. Is there the Django? Yes. Is there some kind of Python or some kind of PHP? Yes. What I'm saying is pick one of the top 3 and go to market with that. Then learn the other ones as you see fit. But spending 6 months learning React or 3 weeks learning React and then jumping over to Angular and then jumping over to Blazor because you heard me talk about it and then jumping over to some PHP because you heard someone else talk about it. Pick one of these and go with it and then get a job and then expand from there. And I think if you specialize in a stack and know it really well, then you're going to be a lot better at winning a role.
Here's the thing. Nobody's going to employ you to know a little bit about a lot of stacks. They're going to employ you to know a lot about a few stacks. That's the difference right there.
Pretty much they're going to be in one stack at their company.
Right.
Or if they have 2 in the company, they're hiring for a specific role of one of the 2. Very rarely do they say, I need you an expert in Angular and React because we do both here. And so like I have projects, and typically they're hiring on one of those particular teams to do something very specific, at least starting out. Even if they're transitioning from one to the other, they're probably still hiring for one particular stack because I need you to do this while we transition over to this, while my other team is doing that. So like it's always specialization is the key to help you land. And so it also helps you get looks easier. So if you have a resume, a LinkedIn portfolio, and a portfolio that screams, Blazor developer, then people looking for Blazor jobs are more likely to interview. Right. But if it's just like, I know everything, and then you've never had a dev job, they're not going to look at you. And that's the other problem. It's just, you can't look like a NASCAR driver. You got the logos all over the jacket.
Right. So, but having never had a job.
Never driven the car.
Yeah, and you've never been in the car. Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly it. Got a question. Actually, we do the question here.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm trying to put this up. There we go. Kurtwood just says, what are the pros and cons of dealing with an internal recruiter compared to an external recruiter?
Nothing. They're all pros. So like there's an external recruiter, and then there's some companies have internal recruiters. They're going to have either one or the other. They're not going to pay an internal recruiting team and also pay third parties usually. So just because you have an external recruiter working for you doesn't mean you don't call an HR internal department either. You do both. You work with both. And it just depends on how the company hires, and so that's what matters. If they're using external recruiters, pretty much you better be going through an external recruiter and not on your own because you're not going to get seen by them. You can apply all day long on the external link, think you're applying to a job, and they have already placed it before the ad was written because the internal recruiter got it, or the external recruiter got it first. And they have 5 or 6 people in their network, and they pick them over there, and he goes, hey, pick from one of these guys. I think they're all great. The guy looks through them, and he picks one. They're interviewing, and you're on the company website applying to a job that's already been filled. That's why you need to work with an external recruiter and internal recruiters. What your job is to do is to make sure you don't get double presented somewhere. So work with them, say, hey, what
that could be a bad look.
Yeah. Well, usually you won't get hired or considered because they don't know who to pay the fee to.
Yeah.
And so they'll just ignore you.
You put them in a position, haven't you? So, and they don't want to argue with who's going to get paid, so they just skip you.
Right. And some companies don't want to use external recruiters. That's fine. Work with the internal department, try to find the company HR and apply. And it's both. You need to work with both to give you the best opportunity. That's
so
a
one
good
of the tips
question,
too about specializing stack too, I just thought about it,
Yeah.
is something we've always said too is it's difficult to choose what stack. You could listen to us based on our experience. You could watch 25 different YouTube videos and they're probably going to recommend 25 different stacks. The best thing to do is look at your market, look at jobs in your market, wherever you want to work. That's what you want to do. Do the research, find where the most of them are, and learn that. It's that simple. And just learn
Pretty
that
much
one thing,
simple.
focus it, and do that. That's
But you've got to really be in your job search. If you're looking Indeed or something like that, you've got to know the key search terms to look for. I talked to someone on YouTube probably a couple of months ago. They were saying they didn't believe me when I say that people hire juniors. He goes, I do not see junior web developer in any title. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
So what?
That's right.
Look for years of experience. Look for the filters in there. Really do a lot of work in here to make sure that you're uncovering all the opportunities. That's what we do. We look every 24 hours. Every morning we're on the job boards looking to see what was posted yesterday. And that's how we find our roles. And we have probably 10 or 12 different search criteria filters that we're putting it through. And we put each one individually, and we're going through the jobs every time trying to find something that matches our role. We're looking at years of experience, job title, location, remote only, all that stuff. We look at everything. So,
okay, let's move on to our next tip then. It's a big one. Applying without a portfolio.
If you don't have a portfolio, you need to go get one right now. So like if you're out there, and especially if you're a junior and you don't have one, then you're at a
you have no proof of work. You're having you are the trust me bro guy.
Trust me bro, I got you.
No one's going to take that chance on you.
No. Now, if you have 5 years of experience or 8 years of experience or 10 years of experience, maybe you can go without a portfolio. But I would say just crank one out, man. It shows your design skills. It's a better calling card than your resume because you can actually show working apps. There's a lot you can do to improve your chances of getting a job. And because we talk to mids and seniors that says, I haven't worked in like 9 months. And I'm like,
right.
If you've got experience in this market and you haven't worked in 9 months, you're doing something wrong. Like you should be working, and it's not the market. It is, unfortunately, it's you. So like you need to figure out, how do I market myself better? And we're not doing that to make you say you're less of a person or whatever, or you're stupid.
You need to do something different.
Do something different. If you've applied 400 or 500 times and you have 7 years of experience on your resume, it's not the market. It's something that you're doing wrong, and how you present yourself, or you're not matching up your skill set with the job you're applying for. Also too, I would say this, don't use AI to auto apply to these jobs. I think you can see
we've seen a trend on this, haven't we, recently?
See them a mile away and it just hurts you, and then honestly, if you're not putting any effort into the job application process, you've automated the whole thing. Don't go on LinkedIn and complain. I've applied to 600 and nothing's happening, and everyone sucks, like, you haven't put any effort in, so what are you complaining about? You automated the whole job search thing, and then you're mad because it doesn't work out. Like, okay, why don't we put some effort into this, and then we can definitely get better results. So
it's always the idea of an automated like job search thing sounds amazing, and yes, you can actually make it work, but it doesn't really work to get you a job. It just works in terms of, can you send applications out? Yeah, sure you can.
So what? Like the AI is not sophisticated enough to know what matches your resume and that kind of stuff. Now, can you use AI to help you craft your resume, craft some messages to people? Absolutely, 100% you should use it. But like, target your search, which when you specify your stack and you have a portfolio, your portfolio should target the stack that you're looking for. And then when they look at it, like, oh, that's a match. Let me talk to him or talk to her because she's got the skills I'm looking for. And if it's general, expect general results. If you have a general resume, expect a general research, and they're typically looking for something specific. So, So if you don't have a portfolio, you're missing out. You can't win without one. And so and if you talk to someone that's a 20-year veteran, said, I've never made a portfolio my whole life and I've never been unemployed. Great.
Yeah.
Not all of us are that lucky, it's so like, don't listen to that advice. Listen to me. I'm just telling you that it's not going to hurt you if you do it. And also you'll learn things. You work on your design skills. If you're a terrible designer, just buy a template and put it together. It's pretty easy. Edit some HTML and get it out the door. I will say this: if you have a bad portfolio, that will hurt you as well. So you can't just get any portfolio. It's got to look good, function good, and be great. It's got to showcase you as a developer and not as a mountain hiker. We always say that all the time. No one cares about your personal hobbies. They want to know, can you code? Can you build things? And are you a fit for my company? That's what they're trying to do. And so all of these are ways to get you to the interview process. Makes it real easy working with a recruiter. It's like, hey, I've got a portfolio. You want to check it out? Give the recruiter something to pitch to the company. And a portfolio is the number one thing that you have.
We've actually seen that, haven't we? We've seen people, we've approached people to say, hey, we have some students looking for some jobs. They'll be like, oh yeah, we don't hire from boot camps or whatever. And be like, oh, let us send you the work. We'll send you the portfolios, take a look. Yeah. They always call back. They always call back. Be like, okay. Oh, this, I wasn't, because they weren't expecting it to be this.
No.
They weren't expecting the level that they're at, the amount of work that's on there. They just were not expecting, like, oh yeah. Because don't forget, as a recruiter, all they're looking at is they're saying, oh, I can sell this. This is a product I can sell. They're looking for something to sell because the recruiter's going to make money when they pitch them to a company. The company's going to pay them because they brought somebody in. That's your dollar signs to a recruiter. When you give them an artifact for you to trade on, that's all they need. They don't want to sell juniors because it's a difficult sell, but they can sell somebody who can actually code and do the work with proof of work. It's a different ask.
Different ask. And so you got to get a portfolio together, and then it's got to be great. So that leads us into the next one.
It does, and actually Mark asked this question. He said, what types of projects do you feel make up a well-rounded portfolio?
Glad you asked, Mark.
Mark, that is literally our next point.
Right. So when you create portfolio projects, and these are portfolio projects, not learning projects. Learning projects are different than portfolio projects. Now, they go hand in hand a little bit.
Don't we? We do both.
But you need to have something that solves a professional business problem that is easily recognizable. And so we think, still to this day, that is a bug tracker because everybody that's hiring has some kind of issue tracking software. They're using Jira or they've built their own, and they're doing it, but they know the problem set really well. And then when they look at yours, they can immediately go, that's pretty good. Like, show me, how did you do this? How did you do that? And what it does, it allows you to control the interview when you have a good looking project that solves a really specific problem that the other interviewer knows about. Now, if you have to explain the whole thing to them, then they could think it's dumb, and it doesn't matter how hard you worked on it. They'll never get past that.
Yep.
The other thing is, if you have what we call toy or kid projects that are kind of dumb, and we say this all the time, but because we see it, it's not like we don't see these. It's Pokemon trading card game. Like, so Pokemon has an API, and you want to call an API, and then they show Pikachu on their portfolio as their showcase. And you gotta understand your audience. So it may be someone my age, all right? So the mid-50s, that's interviewing for the job. Pokemon is something his 10-year-old kid plays with, and he doesn't understand it, more than likely, and he thinks it's dumb. It doesn't matter how cool it is. You know what I mean? Like, you're never getting over that. And so, but when you show them a business problem, it's a whole different take on, and they're like, oh, okay, let me look at your bug tracker here. Or we do some that are smaller, like loan calculator. Like it calculates a loan. Pretty simple project to build, but it has a higher impact because it does something useful. It actually calculates a loan. There's also proof of work in it, which means that the person can come in and type in their own loan right in it, and they can verify, oh, that does work. That is my car payment. Cool. I like that. That's neat. And so, those are the types of things that we do. We do some pop culture things. We do use the API and use the movie API, but we like
that live
on
Fridays.
Yeah, we're building it live on Fridays. We like that project because the person can look at it and go, that movie's in the theaters right now. Snow White or whatever it is in theaters right now. And so there is a proof of that, where Pokemon doesn't have that proof. I mean, they don't know how Pokemon works or whatever it is. And the same can be held for ideas like Tinder for hikers is one I saw before, where you had to explain why you would need a friend to hike the Appalachian Trail. And then you're swiping through the people you want. And it's So it's dating app, so that this guy pitched it to me, had to explain it to me. And I could never understand, like, why would I pick a random person to walk across the southeast of the United States?
This is a way to be murdered.
I know, it sounds like it, right? Axe murderer for hire. Let me find a good one here. I want to die quickly, I never understood that, so like, it made no sense to me,
So the domain, the subject material matters.
Yeah. So we've built 3 projects here at our course here. If you come in person, you'll build these 3 projects. We build a Contact Pro, which is a contact application. And you're thinking, oh, just a contact application? Yeah, but also mails groups, and it does some mailing. So it does some really cooler things. And it is smaller in scope, but it does some really cool things where, like, if you were making a wedding list and you're having your wedding, and you could organize your contacts and you could send out group emails. That's what this app does. It's kind of cool. It organizes with categories and stuff like that. Then we build a blog, which is highly useful. Like, how do you build a blog software? And then you can write about code, so that's another one that you could build. And then third, our kind of capstone project is the Bug Tracker, where it has multiple views on it. We've shown it here before. You can go back, look at our videos where we've demoed it. And you can build that here at Coder Foundry, or you can build it on your own, but you should build a piece of software like that does it. So here's the criteria for a professional project. A, solves a business problem. B, has a database backend. You got to log in for it. So authorization and authentication is required for the app to even work. And then it's got to be professionally hosted so you can see the compiled version of it, see it working. And it's got to look fantastic. So it's got to look like a polished project. Now, here's the one thing that you'll see people say: I don't want to see your crappy bug tracker, Bobby. No one's on it. It hasn't ever been sold. Don't show it to me until you have 1,000 users on it paying you for it. Don't listen to that nonsense. If you had 1,000 users paying you for bug tracker, you would be looking for a job, So like, there's a difference between a product and a demo project. Now, the functionality can be the same in both of them, but you're not trying to sell that product necessarily. You're trying to get a job with it. And so what you do is you have this professional project that if you can impress them enough for them to ask you questions about your code base, you've now controlled the interview. And that is the secret to doing this, is when you show something cool, they want to ask questions about it. Well, how did you do this? How did you do that? And you got to realize you're suddenly now controlling what questions they ask you during the technical interview process, because they're concerned about your software. And then you can demo those answers during, hey, well, let's look at the code. Let me show you how that works. And suddenly you're demoing a project, or you're showing the code base inside of Visual Studio or whatever your IDE is. And now you've controlled the interview instead of asking code trivia questions, which is what happens in most technical interviews. They got 20 code trivia questions, and your short-term memory runs out, or your nervousness kicks in and you don't do well. But if you're just demoing code and you're talking about the code that you write, you've turned a closed book test into an open book test, and now you're controlling the interview, what they're going to ask you about. And that's the number one reason why we say show a professional grade project during the interview. It just makes you stand out, and then it also helps you control the interview.
So there's also this other thing too that we've had thrown at us in this area, and it's along the lines of, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but this is the general consensus, general idea here, is that somebody will say, yeah, but bug tracker's boring, mortgage calculator is boring. I don't know anything about those. I'm not interested in bug trackers. That's not my hobby. I got to make an app that's like something that I love. I love movies. It's got to be an app that something that I love. What would you say to that?
I would say, what speaks is a paycheck. So like, we're trying to get you a paycheck. So if you think you're bored building a bug tracker, I don't know why you would interview at a mortgage company.
Yeah, because you're going to be really bored building mortgage applications.
I know. That's the job is to code. It's not necessarily to be inspired about like what you're working on necessarily, especially when you're trying to break in. Now, ultimately, you get 7 years into this and you have a rock star career rolling, you can pick companies based on what they do, for sure. You can say, I only work things that I'm interested in, and that's something that you can do. But ultimately, you can ask coders down the line, we like the code. So
the domain doesn't matter as much in the job, does it?
Doesn't matter as much. It's like you're still solving the same kind of cool problems. You're still solving the same kind of things. No. So it doesn't really matter whether if you're working at, Twitter or, solving inventory control issues at someone else.
I mean, imagine if you're working at something like Inmore or something here, and it's like they do coupons. Like, what are you really into couponing? Like, no, it was developed and they couldn't care about coupons. But that's the app. That's the building the app. It's the you're right. It's the love of the art of coding, not the It's the process, right? Not the final product.
Right. And so like you end up so you got to question your life choices if that's how you're wired. Like, do you like to code or not? I mean, I can't answer that for everybody. Right. So it should be coding is kind of fun to me. I'm still doing it. I wouldn't get live every Friday, just because if I thought that I hated it, so like, I just build a lot of things. And so like, I think it's fun to do. And so that's the other thing we get feedback. If it doesn't speak to me, I don't want to build it, So therefore I built a Pokemon project because I really like Pokemon.
Right.
You're not going to get a job with it. So build something that will get you a job. And that's what we want to do, is build professional grade projects.
That's it. Exactly. Chris said they just finished the AI Chef and starting Contract Pro.
All right, Chris. Good job.
Or Contact Pro, sorry. Awesome.
Yeah. So he knows what Contact Pro is, so you can showcase that out, and so if you're building an MVC, we're getting ready to re-release that in Blazor.
Yeah, there's going to be a brand new version of that. We've edited it, and that one's all edited and all in the course and everything. When actually somebody did ask the question here too. Andre asked about self-paced course material. It's closer than ever.
Closer than ever. Like, so what we will say is that what we've built is ambitious. Like, it is unlike any course ever. So like, it is definitely recorded all the way to the end. And so we have these hundreds of hours of video that we've recorded. And now we're going back through and adding written materials behind that, as well as external documentation about different topics and everything like that. So when you're recording a video, you're talking about what the video is about. And so now we're going to add to that, say, here's some more things that the instructor in the video may not have mentioned, and this is what he's talking about, or he mentioned it in one line. And so therefore, let's read more about that. And so we'll give a lot more information for the students so you can learn more. So like, it's just taking us a little more time to build it. But we've recorded this through our bug tracker. Right now we're in the can on all of those. We just need to add a little bit more documentation on it. So we're shooting for the moon for this, so we can make the best course on planet Earth. That's the goal. So like, at least that's the Bobby goal here at the staff. I want to make the best one on planet Earth. But it's going to be out in weeks, not months. So, so that's what I'm doing right now, every single day working on it. So.
While we're talking about portfolios too, Chris said, I'd love to have you guys start reviewing portfolios again. I always second guess all my choices, and actually he's another one here too. It says, Will Venture says, can you create a video on which we submit the portfolio and review them out? Yeah, we have done those in the past. As Chris alludes to, we have done those. And I think we will come back to that. I think that's,
we'll come back to it. We can have to do that on a Tuesday and look at them. We like looking at them. So,
Yeah, maybe it's something we do next week. I need to put I have a form. I need to put the form back out there. So, yeah.
So make sure you subscribe so you can get the thing from YouTube if Kevin puts it out.
Yeah, because I'll put it out. I'll definitely put it out on YouTube communities. Yeah, the link will be there so you can put them in. And then we'll just pick the ones that we kind of want to talk about, whether they be great or not so great. Because it's good to have both, right? I mean, people want feedback. I get it. And if it's not good, we'll definitely tell you that. We're not gonna hold back and be like, "Oh, this is the greatest thing ever." Like, no, we're not gonna lie to you. We're also not gonna say you shouldn't be a developer. We're gonna say, "Hey, here's what you did right. Here's what you've done wrong." We try and we try and encourage people and give people help when they need it. That's kind of the point of those.
Constructive feedback, and we're not turning you down. So
there you go.
Submit them. We'll do it.
Exactly. Troy also wants to know, before we get on to our next thing, we entertain the idea of adding an e-commerce application project to the course.
Maybe. So like,
we've talked about it.
We've talked about it. We've got some other ideas that we think are better than that one. So like,
I mean, this would involve Shopify is what we'd really, and it's like,
see that's the problem. So you'd either buy a back end that's already built, or you would use Shopify to do it anyway. And so like, do we want to make Shopify templates? Not really. Right. And so like, it's not that it's not a good idea. It's just that we think there's other ideas in the business domain that are better. And so one of the ideas I'll just say what we're toying around with, and it's not even close to being, but we're talking about like scheduling for restaurants. And so scheduling is like, if you have like a staff of 8 people, and based on historical sales data, how many people need to be there open, how many need to be there at lunch, Same thing for retail stores and those kind of stuff. So the reason I like that project is because I actually built it for a convenience store chain, and we got paid money to do it. And it's a complicated problem that solves a very specific problem, but everyone has it. And like, and everyone goes,
right.
that is a problem. You know, it's like, I don't know. And then you have things like, you know, Kevin can't work on Wednesdays, you know, so like, you know, but I need an opener for Wednesday, you know, like, so, and
it's
so
like on face value, it seems kind of simplistic, but when you get into it, like the edge cases are like, wow, there's so many.
Right. So many edge cases. And then when you tie in historical data to it, like sales data, like Christmas and holidays, you know, 1 year, that's the thing. That's the next thing you'll probably see us build that's new later in the year. But like for now, Bug Tracker still is the premium king. And every time someone shows it from the portfolio, people are amazed that we build that here at Coder Foundry. They're just still amazed by it. They're like, wow, that's really cool. And I would say the latest iteration that's coming out is even better than the previous iterations that we've had. So now we're on Bug Tracker 3 or 4 now. Like we've really kind of like wired in the feature set that we like, that got it down where it's still impressive, but at the same time, not so long that we're not trying to recreate Jira, but like,
right.
There's a lot to it. So I think that you'll like it.
Definitely. Okay. Let's move on to our fourth tip then. And this is not practicing whiteboard or technical interview technique.
And I would say this, let's add the other feature, unwilling to do it.
Yeah, the unwillingness start. That's where it starts. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So like, so I was talking to someone the other day, and they got a quiz in, and they didn't want to take the quiz, you know, because they thought it was like beneath them to do it, you know. I'm like, but you have to. That's the only way to get this particular job. Well, I just won't do it then. So like, so they get themselves out of the process to do it. Now, you can say that whiteboarding's unfair, or technical interview questions are them getting free work, or like you can come up with all these things that people are saying about it. But, you know, it's kind of like in the Matrix, you know, they hold all the keys, you know, like they're talking about the, you know, you gotta do it. Like, that's just the way it is. You have to face the Agent Smith down eventually at the end of the day. And so like, it is a problem. So you need to practice doing it. Here's my hint for this. We have a lot of coding challenges in JavaScript up on our self-paced course. But in general, if you get a whiteboard challenge or something you have to solve during an interview, and you got like 5 minutes or 7 minutes, it comes into this one category. And if you study this one category, you're mostly going to be okay, which is, can I do anything with an array? Can I split array? Can I sort array? Can I dedupe an array? Can I split arrays out and put them in two different things? Can I take two arrays and join them together? So any kind of array questions is kind of where they go. And that's why, to this day, people still ask FizzBuzz, because they want to know if you can loop over a number and figure out if it's odd or even. You know, that's kind of like what it is, you know. But we've seen like balance brackets, you know, how do I balance brackets? You know, curly braces together. You know, we have that one on it, which is just an array. And you know, well, I saw one the other day was like, given this set of numbers, add two of them together and give me the largest sum in this sum of numbers. So you need to find the min and the max in this array of numbers, and that sum, you need to return that sum to me. And so like that's a challenge, you know. And how would you do that? And then how do you do it fast? You know, like, you know, loop over it multiple times. Can I do it in one loop? What do I do? So there's a lot of things about those challenges that people kind of don't study. And then when they get them, they fail, or they don't take them at all because they're afraid of it. The best one is the take-home challenge, in my opinion, because you can like use Google AI or whatever to build it. But it'll take you a weekend to do. And some people won't do it because of the time involved. And if you're unemployed, you're like, what else do you got to do? Just crank out the code and make it. What I've always said, if you think this is free work from that company, take their challenge, turn it into a product, post it on your portfolio with the GitHub repo.
Right.
And that's their fault for trying to get their intellectual property pushed out during an interview.
But I'll say there's a 99.9% chance it's
that's
not.
That's not what they're doing. They're not doing that. You know, they're not making a chess program. You know, like that's not what the company does. Right. So like that's I think that's what you can do. You take it as an ability to say, oh, that's a really neat challenge. Let me see if I can do that. I can tell you, I've seen challenges come back from students, and I'm not even interviewing. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Let me see if I can build that. You know, that's kind of cool. You know, like I like that challenge. You know, like I like that. And that's where you need to get like, oh, I like building these things out. And if you get a take-home challenge, Or if you get a choice between an in-person coding challenge and a take-home challenge, take the weekend take-home challenge one. It's more work, more time involved, but you can definitely perform better on that because you don't have the time pressure of like.
And it's more like real world because that's how you actually code, isn't it?
Is.
Coding isn't necessarily a spectator sport. You kind of need to iterate over things and make decisions and make errors and those things. And you feel like when you're in an interview situation, you can't do that. It feels more difficult to do that. What I'll also say about these challenges, though, too, is there really is, although it seems like there's an infinite amount of these, there's a small selection of these that keep coming up. Like you said, the array ones. If you've seen them before and you've done a bunch of these, chances are one of them's coming up. If you're getting a whiteboard challenge and you've done it before, it is way easier to do it a second time than it is the first time. Just way easier. It is
and
9 days
sometimes they're actually the same, just asked a different way or a different set or
that's
whatever.
That's the other thing. Recognizing the type
everything
of question.
about arrays, like, that's the sum of two elements in an array question. You just want the max. Some people want the min. That kind of stuff. Or some people want the duplicates. Like how many duplicate numbers are in this that I want to add to 2. I mean, I don't know. It's but they'll ask it 6 ways to Sunday, but it's the same algorithm, the same answer. And can you crank through those kind of things? Can you think through them? And so what we do is we go through, we have I think it's 13 JavaScript coding questions that we put together. I'm not saying that one of those will be seen, but they're all in the same kind of category. And if you can answer those and do them, when you get another one, you're like, oh, that's kind of like number 7, whatever it is. And then you can recognize the pattern and then you just kind of crank it out, I do. So I think you could take those. That'll help you out. It's on our self-paced course.
It's free too on our self-paced course. You can go to learn.codefoundry.com. That is.
It's in JavaScript, so it's pretty universal. So if you're coding, if you're looking for C# jobs, just translate to C#. Or if you want to do these in, I don't know, something else, Java, you can. But JavaScript's pretty universal for coding challenges because it compiles in the browser, and it's really easy to do right there and in person. You don't really need a compiler or compile step.
I put a link just to learn to Code Foundry. It's the JavaScript coding challenges course. Coding challenges with JavaScript.
Now, what I will say this, if you go look at those 13 coding challenges and you have no idea what we're talking about, this is the other problem you're running into is you think your skills are up here when they're down here, and maybe there's some more education that you got to do. So the other reason people are running into it is because they think a junior dev needs to be able to make a web page with HTML. And that's really, it's got to be, I think you need to focus on full stack development, and your skills are up here a little bit higher than what the people on Twitter are telling you. And I think that is the disconnect between no one hires juniors. No one's hiring you. They're hiring juniors. It's just your definition of junior and my definition of junior are different. I think they're up here and you think they're down here, and therefore you get disillusioned about the job market. It's just that you don't have enough skill yet. And so you have to skill up, not skill down. And I think you need to know HTML, CSS, some JavaScript, and some kind of back-end language. And pick a framework.
And then you got to build some things. You need
build something with it. Yeah, build something with it. And then I think that's where you need to be. And you can learn it on your own. You can learn it in a boot camp. You're probably not going to learn that in a college, but you can still go to CS to get a CS degree if you want. But just know that after you leave that CS degree, you're going to have to build some stuff with a modern stack and then to get a job. So it's no longer good enough to have a resume and a CS degree to get a job. You need to have some kind of portfolio and proof of work. They're just hiring. That's the way they're hiring now. And people can say I'm crazy, but I've talked to a bunch of CS grads all the time. Like, I can't find a job. No one's hiring me. I'm like, what's your portfolio? I don't have one. Well, that's why. I mean, like, you need to show them what you can do. What can you do? I don't know. I'm like, do you know anything? So I asked a CS grad that was coming here. She was, or he, I can't remember which one it was. They were asking, I've been sent this Hack Reactor quiz. Can you help me decipher this? And they didn't even know what SQL was, but they're a CS grad. So you need to know these things in order to get a job. And so therefore you have to prove your skills a little bit higher than what you think. And, and it's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, backend language, SQL, and some kind of framework. So there's about 6 things that you need to do. And put together a full stack web app, build a bug tracker, or something like that with it, and then show it off in an interview. So, and then be willing to take these tests. Be willing to jump through the hoops to get a job. You have to. Like, You can't be selective, especially with your first job out. What I would say this is risk failure to do this. Go ahead and do it and like face plant in the dirt and then figure out like, oh, okay, so that's what it is. Don't take it as a personal affront or make you quit.
Yeah.
Just do it so you
Learn
can like,
from
okay.
Your next time you're going
to
win.
Now we know what it's like, now so it's like, I use sports metaphors all the time, but it's like the first time you go play basketball, in the neighborhood or something like that. And you realize, okay, this is kind of where I'm at, I'm not very good. I need to practice, I need to get in shape, or I need to do some stuff. And so I think that is what you need to do, is get your skills higher, and then you'll compete better. But the only way to know is to go to an interview and kind of fail it. And you're like, okay, that's where it's at. And so what we'd say is, if you go to an interview, take detailed notes of every single question they ask you and every challenge you're given, so that you have a chance to review them at post-interview. And when we get to our final tip, I'll tell you why you do that. But
and that is, let's move on to it, not following up after that interview.
So if you go to an interview and you bonk it, you did terrible. They asked you a coding challenge and you couldn't answer it. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what an array is. But you could go back and take notes from that, solve it, and send it back to them. And just
you gotta be brave.
Nervous.
This is the thing. You gotta be brave at this point. I get it, because this is like, most people are gonna be like, I'm not doing that.
I'm not talking to that guy ever again. He thinks I'm an idiot.
Right. Right. So you have to be brave. I know it seems weird sending it back in. It does. It seems like counterintuitive. Like, I just bombed it. Why the hell would they want to hear from me again?
Yeah, exactly.
You can still win.
You can still win. You can turn it around. But it also teaches you how to solve that particular problem too. And if you send it back in, make sure it works. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So don't send it broken.
Oh yeah. I mean, they will never speak to you again if it doesn't work.
Wow. Okay.
Like, you will be the ultimate fail then. Yeah, that's bad.
But you got to follow up after interviews. So you got to send emails. And so what we say here at Foundry is we work companies to yes or no. And so we keep calling them until they tell us what the feedback was. And that can be a no, or that can be a yes. And if we get a no for a student, we say, well, what was it about him? We're just trying to help him educate so he can move forward in his career. And then we get those feedback from that, and then we share it with the student and we debrief them. What you need to know, if you get a no from somebody, is ask them why, and say, be honest with me. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. You're not, they're just, I'm like, well, we're just looking in another direction. Yeah, exactly. Right. But say, just, help me out here. Well, your coding challenge wasn't received well. It didn't match what we were looking for. And then you can go back and look at that and go, okay, yeah, that thing didn't work, or I didn't answer that question really well enough. You also can go back and look at all the technical questions they ask you and look at all your answers and see if they lined up. And maybe then that's when here at Foundry, they call into the instructors and they say, I was asked these things, because we ask them, and then we kind of review it with them to make sure that they can do better the next time. So we kind of help them. So bottom line is, you need to know more, not less, even in the age of AI. You need to know more than not less. And so don't think AI is going to solve all your problems. You need to know more. So
yeah, again, it's a skill up, not a skill down thing.
Skill up, especially if you think that we're heading for a recession or the world's going to end. Skill up. You always skill up in the downturns, because that you've got to be more competitive in a more competitive marketplace. And yes, it's not 2021 or whatever it was where they were hiring everybody, they're taking volunteers for coding. Now you actually have to compete for those jobs. And I think that has let some disillusion among a lot of people in our market that says no one's hiring them. No, they're not hiring you. So skill up, not skill down. And yes, it is more difficult than it was in 2020, but it's never going to be like that ever again. I mean, like, that was a 1 year, 18-month period. That was insane hiring.
They'll hire everybody.
Hired anyone. Like, hey,
oh, you've heard of HTML? Sure, come on in.
Yes,
come on in.
We're taking volunteers. That you volunteering for this job, and we'll pay you.
But then that market righted is what happened. The market was like, oh, we've overhired here. We've got too many people here that know little. We're gonna.
Yeah, and they let a lot of people go, and people panic and say, well, is the age of development over? And that's what people are still saying. I'm like, no, like it's now back to normal, which is stronger than any other job market, with the exception of maybe like nursing or doctors. I mean, it's right up there with the most in-demand job in the U.S. still. and it's projected to go even higher, even with AI. What I will say this today is if you're looking at AI, I talked to a father or heard about a father talking to someone and said like he was worried about his kids because AI would not give them any opportunities in the future that would replace all jobs. And I walked him through like, what does all jobs replace look like? And the more you look at that, you realize that AI is going to be a tool that we use, especially in coding, to enhance our skills, not replace us because it's too complicated. And then when you look at the frameworks being released today and how they're going to integrate things into these frameworks to making AI apps or empowered apps easier, that should tell you all you need to know. So things like MCP protocol, things like doing RAG retrievals, those are the types of things you're probably going to have to add to your skills going forward because those are the types of apps we're going to be building. And guess what? We're going to be building them. We're not going to be prompting them. So that's important.
Yeah, definitely.
So that is what you need to know.
And Nightmare has a point here too. We talk about this all the time. Because to be fair, coding issues are nowhere near what you were doing on a daily basis at the job. If you fail the process, it doesn't mean you are not good enough for the job. It's kind of the point that they have to interview somehow. And agreed, the process isn't, it's perfect. Not great. It's never been great. Yeah. But they have to do something. And it's like, we've seen some really good versions of this and we've seen some really bad versions of this. Yeah. And you're right, like asking you to solve a bubble sort or something and do this thing. Exactly. It's like, you'll never ever do that on the job, ever. But that's what they're going to ask you because they have to try and determine, can you code?
And I've canceled some interviewers and I've looked at their challenge stuff and I'm like, listen, man, do you do this on a daily basis? Is that what you're looking for? And they're like, no, we just want a hard problem. I'm like, okay,
what's the point?
The reason you think it's easy is because you've looked at it. Imagine if I asked you this hard problem and you had no time to prepare. I just spring it on you and you expect them to do it in 7 minutes. I think you're weeding out a lot of candidates. And that's why I think take-home test is better. Way better to analyze what they do. Can they cheat? Can they? Yeah. Okay. But like you can interview around the thing they turned in.
It's easy to find a cheater. It's ridiculously easy to find a cheater. If you understand the problem, you can ask a single question and weed out a cheater because they're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to describe what they've actually done. Right. So the first question they're going to throw themselves under the bus. It's first easy. Time. So there's no. So that goes for if you are going to cheat, don't because it's not going to help you.
You're going to get found out like immediately. So like, but I think that but today, if you're looking at 2025 today, April, whatever this is, it's still web dev, and it's going to continually be web dev for the next 10 years or 15 years because it's easier to install. It's getting more and more robust every single day. Yes, there'll be web development. Yes, there'll be desktop development. Yes, there'll be mobile development, but web development's going to have way more opportunities for you, especially breaking in. If you want to specialize later, I would say that. But here in the US, web development's still going to be the thing you should know. I think that's full stack and learn a stack and stick with it. Just stick with it.
I know this is kind of like future predicting, but we've talked about this in the past a bunch of times. But I think even the next screen shift is still even web dev because you think like I think. I think the next screen shift is going to be some sort of VR AR thing. It's going to be glasses of some sort. That still needs to use HTTP. It still needs to use some way to display it. It's probably going to be the same underlying technologies for certain. Which probably the same display technologies or something very, very similar to what we have today.
Yeah, and even AR enhanced or AI enhanced apps is still going to be calling into some kind of over HTTP, calling some kind of service that you wrote. It's either communicating to a third-party data thing and matching it to your LLM, or you're calling LLM directly into Azure. Those things are still using APIs and HTTP and everything to call. And so it's always going to be this underlying technology. So that's the great thing is nothing's really changing at the lower levels. And it's like fancy on the front end. And you're like, oh, it's all changing. I'm wearing Ray-Bans now. I can't possibly do that. You're like, well, yeah, you can. I mean, like you got to figure out how to communicate via voice. How do we do that? Like the UI is going to be simpler, what can we show? How does that work? And, but your back end's going to be the same. SQL server, some kind of service layer, some kind of repository layer, some kind of auth layer. Yep. So like all of those things will be, if you know that, then you're going to transition over the next 10 years easily into whatever the next thing is. If we ever get driverless cars, I think we'll have a screen in the windshield that'll be the new browser.
That's the thing.
You don't have to drive the car.
it really doesn't matter what that next technology is, because it is going to be the same underlying technology, whether it be glasses, screens, I don't know, whatever, holograms, whatever it is. The technology underlying is still going to be the same, and being a web dev is a gateway into that, just like it was when we went from kind of desktop to mobile. Right? People say like, "Oh, that's a big." It's not. It's not that. The underlying technology is the same.
It's still the same stuff, and so even mobile development is largely going to be a web back end to it, you know, and then you're integrating into that. Now, some of it will run in process on the phone. I get it.
Yeah, there's native stuff too, but again, that's like in addition to it.
Right. But for the most part, if you're logging in or you're off into something, that's not happening on the phone. It's happening somewhere else on a server somewhere, and that is web development, some kind of back end that you've wrote with, you know, C# probably in APIs or minimal APIs, something like that, or Java or something. I think there's two of them back there that are the most prominent, which is C# and Java. I don't think JavaScript Node is really prominent when you start looking around and like, how do I write my web backend?
Not when it comes to enterprise at all.
No, because it's just not fast enough. But, you know, JavaScript, obviously, front end. Yeah, React is pretty strong. So if that's what you want to learn, go for it. But I think if you learn a stack and stick with it, you're going to have more success in this marketplace than not knowing just a little bit about everything. So
yep, definitely. Here you go. One last thing here then. Troy says, knowledge of building web APIs and consuming them seems really prevalent in modern development too.
Every time if you interview for the next 2 weeks, you're going to be asked what a JWT is, or how do I auth a backend, and how do I make sure this cookie is the same going to and fro. They're going to ask you how you.
This is why we teach it.
Yeah, this is why we teach it. They're just going to ask it, you know, because it's important, you know. And how do I stand up endpoints? You're going to need to know what are the verbs there. What's a get, a post, a put, and a patch? What's the difference between those? You know, and you should know that, you know, like, oh, I know what a get is. I know what a post is, you know. I think those are the types of things that you need to know. You need to know about routing. How do I figure out the route to my API endpoint? Like, what do I do? How do I make sure that someone's authorized when they call it? What do I do? In C#, we have answers for that. Java has answers for that. If you're using something like Next.js, it has answers for that. But if you're answering it with C#, I think you're going to be really, really well prepared, you know, because I think C# is dominant in this area. I'm not saying it's 100%. I don't even know what the percentage is, but it's dominant. Like it is the back end for that. And so if you know C# web API, you're going to be well versed and well ready for the job market. You need to know how to stand them up and make them, and you need to know how to consume them. If you can do those two things, I think you're better. And we have all of those things that we put in our course where we build our own, we consume them, you know, like our, what is it, Galactic Relics or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
If you can do that challenge, as there's a website out there, Kevin can probably list it down there in the chat down here.
I'll find it.
You can do that, you're probably okay. I mean, like that's like, oh yeah, I could build that view on that. If you could take the TMDB API and build something like we're doing on Fridays without my help, you're probably okay. You know, like you're like, okay, I know how to turn these JSON results into objects, and then I can take that object and turn around and make a UI with it, whatever. So we have lots of resources that we do here on the self-paced course and in our in-person programming. That's what we do. And I think that's what sets us apart differently, because we want you to win. Like, so what do I need to know to win? You know, that's what we're always asking ourselves at Coder Foundry. What does the student need to know in order to win? And we try to cram as much as we can into these courses.
That's it. Okay.
All right.
That's it. Let's get out of here.
All right. Let's go eat some tacos.
Let's go.
Kevin. All right.
Let's
go. Good luck, guys. Keep coding. We'll see you Friday. We'll write some more code for Obscura. So check us out on Friday. See you then.
See you later.